When you go into calorie deprivation, say take in 75% of the calories that you would otherwise want to consume, your metabolism slows down. So you might feel less vital, you might have less sexual drive, you might get sick more easily, you might have less desire and energy to go to the gym. You might live longer because you've slowed down the aging process. The other side of that is I want to peak out my vitality and I want to live as robustly as possible. And if it means I die a little bit earlier, but I have a higher health span into my 60s and 70s and 80s, then I accept that trade-off.
Well, welcome to Biohacking with Brittany, the podcast where science meets wisdom. I'm Brittany Ford, holistic nutritionist, biohacker, and mom. And for years, I struggled with gut issues, hormonal imbalances, and the exhaustion of motherhood while running a business. Biohacking and functional medicine became my way back to clarity, vitality, and trust in my body. And that's why I'm here, not just to share information, but to share the practices and perspectives that truly shifted my health and my life. Each week, I bring you science-backed tools, honest conversations, and rituals I live myself so you can return to your own body's wisdom and create longevity on your own terms. Because your body already knows this is just the space to remember. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I am thrilled for you to be listening. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, welcome. And I just want to take a moment to extend my gratitude to every single one of you who downloads, listens, subscribes, and does the whole thing. This podcast has been a labor of love. But I am so grateful for it, and it's really transforming this year. I'm really shifting on how we're doing everything over here. So you're going to see some new things coming out that you haven't seen before that I feel like are really aligned with where I'm going. So stay tuned for all those little nuggets. Before I dive into this episode, we are doing a women's longevity and health and wellness retreat in Costa Rica in less than 2 months. So if you want to join me from March 2nd to 7th, you can still do so. There's single occupancy where you get your own room. There's double occupancy, which is a bit cheaper. You can do that. And this is a space for women who really want to just become healthier and take time for themselves and activate that like inner knowing that they're ready for something more and something deeper. I had my welcome call with a friend of mine, well, one of the guests who's coming, and she was saying like, this is the year that she really needs to turn her health around and that this retreat is like forcing her to do that already, even though we're 2 months out of it. And I was like, exactly, like that's the magic of it is you commit to something, you know it's coming, and then during it and after, you really do go through like a transformation because you get to spend so much time sitting back and thinking about your life and yourself and what you're doing and where you're going and what you really want to plan and everything like that. So there is so much magic there. I keep saying this word magic, but there is. And I would love for you to experience it. I very much feel like if you feel called to this retreat, this is your moment and this is your time to shine. I'm not here to convince you to come. When I go on my retreats, it's very like the timing obviously has to work out. And I think that I'm pulled to it. I'm pulled to the images. I'm pulled to the person hosting it. I'm pulled to the location that I feel like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Costa Rica. This is my opportunity. Or I've been following Brittany for years and I can't wait to meet her in person, stuff like that, you know? So yeah, that's kind of like what I have been doing when I go on my own retreats. This year, just to share, I'm looking at going on a retreat probably in November. I also know another woman who I really admire is running one. I think it's a bit more soul focused, or I don't know how she's doing it. It might be soul and business, like not very health focused, but she's doing it. I think she's doing it in Fiji. So I might go in 2 this year, but I also feel called to potentially step into ayahuasca this year. So stay tuned to see where the year goes, because maybe I'll do a few. I'm in Costa Rica in March. Maybe I'll just do some ayahuasca while I'm there. We'll see. But I would love to have you join me. And if you feel the call and you want to be in person, that would be incredible. Today's episode is we're going on like quite a deep dive onto different aging and longevity hallmarks. aging hallmarks. There's now 14. There were 12. Now there's 14. And I actually got to sit down with Dan Party, who is the Chief Health Officer at Qualia Life Sciences. And I will put the link in the show notes. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany. And we had such a great chat. He is brilliant. He's very smart. And we talked a lot about the different pathways of aging and what we can actually do about it. We talk about stem cells, exosomes, NAD, glutathione. Oh my gosh, what other buzzwords do we talk about? So many things like that. And I asked him those questions that I feel like are kind of buzzing around, things that I have thought about, practically, when I see a skin serum that says plant stem cells. Is that legit? What does that mean? I thought stem cells had to be in the fridge. Just even practical questions like that we kind of get into, which I loved. But then we also definitely get deep into the science of how it works, why they're important, why these molecules matter, etc. I think a lot of people are going to love this episode. It's very biohacky and it's very on brand right now. Let me know what you think. And again, if you want to try any of Qualia's supplements, like their stem cell supplement or the Senolytic, or they have an Epic nootropic, which was my first introduction to them years ago. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany. I think it'll save you at least 15%. So check that out. I will link that for you. And I will catch you soon for another episode. I put out episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. And yeah, we're rolling. We're rolling to the end of January. Thank you for being here, and I will chat to you soon. Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I have Dan Party. Am I saying your name correctly? Joining me from Qualia. I think so many people know Qualia in the biohacking and longevity space. And actually, I think this is our first long episode that we're doing together. So I'm really excited to get into the nitty gritty longevity aging space with you.
It's great. Yeah, me too. Me too. It's a fun space and it's new. We've been wanting to cure, solve, figure out some way to intervene in aging for a long, long time. But I would say in the last 25 years, we've made significant strides. I think for really since then, we have started to feel with some of the early research that this was a tractable problem, that we could do things that truly move the needle in whether it's living longer or just living better. I think those are things that anybody is interested to learn more about. And so it's been fun to monitor the growth of the space over time and then be part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think was because with your extensive background, what do you think was the turning point that made us really realize, oh, actually, this is something we can hack or elevate or upgrade, whatever word you want to use? How did we shift to that? Oh, we can actually do something about how we age.
Yeah, there are multiple different, like many things in science, there are different labs around the world that are making progress at a similar pace. And it's funny how often you see a discovery occur at the almost exact same time that is 2,000 miles away. And that doesn't happen just in the longevity space, but it has happened here too. But I would say that some early work out of MIT by Lenny Grante, where they were looking specifically to see if they could extend the lives of these C. elegans, which are these small little roundworms, with some success, led to this feeling that, okay, there's legitimate science happening here. And that it started the movement of geroscience. And geroscience is different than gerontology. So gerontology, of course, is looking at, it's the study of how we age and get older and whatnot. Geroscience is specifically the science looking at how to intervene so that we can age differently. And that is a newer field, frankly. In fact, one person that I interviewed on my own podcast, Human OS Radio, which I'm no longer running at the moment, but I started talking about aging probably around 2015. And I interviewed somebody named Mike West, who was the CEO of Geron, which at the time, it's no longer, but at that time, they were dedicated to working on trying to intervene in aging. And he had said that when he wanted to go into it during his PhD thesis, that pretty much all of the people that he was working under told him that he was crazy, that this was going to kill his career, that this was not considered a legitimate branch of science. And so in a way, it was a bit toxic to say that you wanted to work on it because it felt like you were not dealing with reality of real science. Real science is working on disease. It's working on, things that we know to be mortal killers. That's where the money is. For a lot of those pioneers, it was both risky and brave for them to say, hey, there's a there. And so Lenny Guarente was at MIT, and then out of his lab was a young researcher named David Sinclair. And he wrote the book Lifespan. And his line of work was specifically looking at NAD and also sirtuins, which are considered guardians of the genome. They're basically these stress response pathways that he felt might be the key to longevity. Now, since that time, the importance of sirtuins specifically has been de-emphasized. They are still very important, but they are not the singular key to helping us live well beyond what we think is possible now. But the other story that was part of that is the NAD. And so that, of course, think of it as like a currency that exchanges, electrons in the cell. The way I like to think about NAD is that think of it as like cabs in a city. And your only way to get around the city depends on how many is by cab. And so when you get older, the number of cabs decline. And so everything slows down. And the idea was, okay, we've identified the importance that these are contributing to trillions of metabolic reactions per day. Everything goes through the NAD system, and we're losing half by the age of 50. So can we reconstitute our NAD system by providing precursors, by getting injections, by getting an IV NAD, all sorts of mechanisms on how to do that. And that really became, I think, the first legitimate aging intervention. And so that was from that early work actually came a product that now many people take.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think, it's interesting to see how far we've come. Like, I remember a few years ago being like, oh, I think everybody's writing books about longevity right now. Like, there were so many people who were like, these big names in the space, the health and wellness space, like this person's take and that person's take. And now I'm at a point where I care a lot about longevity. And I'm like, okay, how does this impact women and mothers? And like, let's make this let's broaden the whole entire conversation. But I think what I'm coming up against, and I'm curious in your world of qualia and what you're exposed to, what I see in the discussions I have is people who are in their 30s or maybe even younger don't really care necessarily about longevity. Not everybody, obviously, but there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I will actually think about aging like when I retire, or I'll care about like living longer when I retire, like when I'm in my 60s, whatever. So from your perspective and what you understand about science and how it works, to those people, what would you say? Like, because think about it, like they have, let's say decades of extra time where they can make these decisions of like taking an NAD supplement or lifestyle decisions that could have huge ripple effects on how they age.
Yeah. I would say to those people that you are completely normal to feel the way that you do. We are very different people in different decades of life. Our needs, motivations, and desires change. And one thing that I have been impressed by and happy about is how this idea of Healthspan, which essentially is extending a higher level of health deeper into our lifespan, has become something that people care about and take action on. Essentially, it is like, well, it's a way to think about health, which is a very big, complicated term that can sometimes be feckless in getting us to do anything because it's like, what does it actually mean? Healthspan is at a certain time of life, something that people get and want to invest time and resources in. And typically that occurs when you start to feel and experience the effects, the ravages of getting older. And so it's hard to tell a 30-year-old person or a 20-year-old person that they should care about aging because at that time in their life, it's more around mating. There's other interests that supersede the aging goal. And whether, and a lot of that is sort of built into, again, the decade and what you do care about. Now, some people who tap into these threads early on will definitely benefit from the knowing information that would potentially help to alleviate It would change the trajectory from an earlier period, which then would help to preserve the capacity of the body in potentially even more of a deft way. And that's cool. But I think it's still okay to start taking action in your mid 40s and even in your 50s. So anytime a person wants to start making efforts towards their goal, that's great. It's also true that doing things that preserve your health for a purpose of longevity very early on might not turn out to be the right thing to do at that time of life. We're very different creatures depending on where we sit within the life history of a human. The life history is essentially the lifespan. And so if you're doing things that are aiming towards reproduction and reproductive health, then doing things that are aiming to conserve your physiology could be counterproductive. And so we have to deal constantly with trade-offs. And it does start to make more sense when you've exited that period and you want to now say, okay, well, how do I preserve myself for as long as possible? And there's also an interesting dialogue between, can I go into this conservation mode, or can I aim to just peak out my vitality? And those two can be in conflict as well. Right. Yeah. So we can dive into that if you'd like.
Yeah. Why do you think that those two are in conflict?
Well, think about the idea of fasting and calorie restriction. We know that a lot of the areas of research in aging are tapping back to a major theme of calorie deprivation. When you go into calorie deprivation, say take in 75% of the calories that you would otherwise want to consume according to the drives of your physiology, then your body goes slow, your metabolism slows down. So you might feel less vital, you might have less sexual drive, you might get sick more easily, you might have less desire and energy to go to the gym, but you might live longer because you've slowed down the aging process. The other side of that is I want to peak out my vitality and I want to live as robustly as possible. And it means I die a little bit earlier, but I have a higher health span into my 60s and 70s. I accept that trade-off. So science hasn't perfectly figured that out, but there are two different streams that we could tap into.
I would love to invite you to be a part of my new private online women's health and longevity community called the Longer Life Community. This is a space where I do bi-weekly calls with everyone live on Zoom. So these Q&As are where you can pre-submit questions or even come up live on the call and ask all of your health questions. I also do private podcasts where all of the guests who come on this very show hop into my private community and answer your pre-submitted questions. And I do protocols. Right now, I'm releasing one protocol a week, and these range from my latest women's longevity workout protocol to peptides, morning routine, hormone replacement therapy, everything like that. These are deep in research. What is the latest thing that everyone is saying, what you need to know, and has the PDF so you can download it, keep it on your computer, phone, or even print it. This community has so much content, but honestly, the best part is that there's so many women in there. It's a live, vibrant community where women are answering questions daily, talking to each other, and participating. And we all get to meet every other week. I really invite you to join. It's only $97 a month. This is so cheap. It is so affordable. I literally spend more on skincare probably in a week. And I wanted to create a place where we can all come together, talk about women's longevity and intuition. There is no other place like this on the internet. I am very serious. There's no other place where you can talk about living in alignment with yourself and your values, big life decisions around relationships and work and where you want to move and live, and also find protocols that are about your health, that are tailored to you as a woman. Not men, but you as a woman. There are moms, there are grandmas, there are women in there without kids. This is a space and a community for women built by women. And I invite you to join us. Again, $97 a month. If you pay for the year, it's actually $970. So you get 2 months for free, which is so affordable. So I really want to extend my invite to you. Join us. There's so much content daily, weekly. Soon we're going to be doing challenges. We're going to be doing all sorts of things, themes. And I also announce special things in there before anywhere else. So like my VIP one-on-one consulting and my retreats and immersions and things like that. I would love to have you to join us. It is linked on my website. It's in my bio and it is in the show notes of every single episode. Just go click and join us and I will see your beautiful face on our next community call.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And actually that was the example I was thinking of when you were talking earlier is fasting for women can actually have really negative effects on your fertility and your menstrual cycle. But we know that it can be really good for aging and longevity. And I used to fast quite a bit. And then, my cycle became irregular and my sleep was disrupted. So I stopped. But I've always said to myself, like, if and when I get to menopause, I will definitely be fasting again because the benefits are there. And I try to get my husband to fast and these people around me. But it's like you said, the trade-off, right? Like, I'm not in a place right now where it makes sense for me to do that. Because even if I get benefits from fasting for my longevity, but if I create hormonal chaos, then I'm causing stress, which is just going to age me faster anyway. So it wouldn't really work out.
Yeah. And that's why it's okay to think of health relative to where you are in life. And so we sometimes try to do everything all at once. And that comes from a really great desire. I've learned about these things, I've heard about their benefits, and I care about self-preservation and being a good steward of my own health, and I want to do everything I can. And that's awesome. The nuance of this is that we might want to temporarily separate some of these activities, meaning we separate them by time. And so if you are in a period where fertility does matter to you, you want to make sure that you're not in a calorie deprived state. And yet at the same time, you want to have good caloric control so that you do maintain health and you're not over consuming calories. And it just so happens to align very well with a really healthy diet, which offers you great signals to take calories in at the right level without over consuming. So it's about maintaining that fine balance at that time of life. And then later, if you want to tap into some of the benefits of fasting, then you don't have as much to worry about in terms of whether or not you are fertile at that time.
Yeah. I mean, you can do like short fasts, right? Like you could do a few days every quarter, and that tends to be okay for fertility. But it's just this like daily intermittent fasting that was like such a fad for a while that can be really disruptive. Yeah. I started caring about longevity quite a while ago. I actually just didn't call it longevity. It was a lot when I saw the people around me who were older getting sick, like my parents or my in-laws now and stuff like that. And different types of sickness and struggle, right? Like weight issues, mental health issues, surgery, relying on pharmaceuticals for this and that, and Tylenol for this pain and that pain. And I remember just thinking, like, I really don't want that to be me.
Yeah.
In my 60s, I really don't want that to be me. Like, I really want to be strong and healthy. And if I have grandkids, like I can run around and I can keep up with them. And like, that has always kind of been my motivation. So it's not even like living longer. It's just like, it's like the health span, like you said, like I just want to feel as good as long as possible.
Yeah. I think that's a great ambition because we get a really nice feedback when we live in that way. And so that is how I've mostly chosen to live my life. And if I'm leaving something on the table in terms of ultimate longevity because I'm peaking out vitality, I'm okay with that because I feel like it's easier to adhere with it because I'm getting good feedback signals. So I want to feel robust for workouts. I want to feel energetic. And I do things to optimize around that. So how much protein do I take in? Well, this is a perfect illustration of those two different threads. Some people feel that you should have a very low calorie diet because you're stimulating less mTOR and growth pathways. And as a result, you might experience some enhanced longevity because of that. On the other hand, the exact opposite has now come into popularity where there is evidence that if you take a higher level of protein on a daily basis, that is probably the best way to maintain muscle mass, which is really important for your functioning as you get older. And so both are true, which is kind of mind-bending. Like, what do I do there? So we all have this option of making a choice that feels right for us. So I would say if you're somebody who's not physically active and you have to work at a computer and you're not currently exercising, doing things like fasting and conservation probably make great sense. If you're really trying to be very robust and set goals in the gym and feel very vigorous, you could have what seems like the antithetical approach to stream one and still be making a good decision for your health. And that can be very confusing.
Yeah. I mean, and especially, I forget what podcast I was listening to, but they were kind of saying along this thread of like the last third of our lives is typically spent in decline. So it like makes the question of like, why would I even want to live longer if I'm feeling shitty and I'm in a hospital and people have to take care of me and like all of this stuff. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And then the question becomes, okay, this decade, next decade, whatever, how do I really expand my health span and from a practical level and above and beyond just like exercising and getting outside, although those things are so massive for it. And we can talk about it as well. Like some of the supplements that Qualia has is like, I wonder if I were to take like, the Qualia Senolytic for 30 years every quarter, like where would I be? Like from your perspective, do you think like something like that would actually make a big difference?
Yeah. So that truly is the big question that we don't have great evidence for at this point in time. And so for those who are looking to do things that take existing science and capitalize on them before the science is completely settled, which might even occur after we are no longer here, because science takes a very long time, then you have to rely on some of the principles that we do understand from the science, the epistemic knowledge that we've generated so far. And there is a little bit of risk. So the risk being that, we might have to change our strategy. We learn all the time new things. So we had a hypothesis. I'm just speaking in generalities here, but you have a hypothesis that a thing is a certain way, and then new evidence comes out and it changes things. And that is a part about being healthy. We have to ebb and flow with the knowledge that comes out. And I'm not saying being overreactive to the latest study. What I'm saying is that when the science starts to indicate across multiple studies that we want to make a slight trajectory shift in this direction, that we, with ease, we do our best for the information that we have at the time right now, right? So are you a person whose identity is stuck with a particular set of habits, or is your identity somebody who wants to always be doing the smartest, latest approach, which could evolve over time? And if I think you're in the latter camp, then you don't have to get hung up on alterations in what you think is the best evidence to work on. And that's how I act. That's what speaks to me. So yeah, do I think that, they're with Healthspan, and we have these now hallmarks of aging. And what's nice about them is they created a model that is designed to take a lot of streams of evidence. So things that we can observe with the aging process that we also could potentially intervene on. And so part of the original hallmarks of aging by Guido Kromer and Carlos Lopez Oten, this came out in 2013. It's been cited 17,000 times. It's one of the most popular journal articles in the journal Cell Press. And what it did is it really created a model for the geroscience community to say, okay, we now have, there's a saying that I love and I stick with it. No models are perfect, but some are helpful. And so what it did was create a conversation where other researchers can now test against this model to see what's true, or if their evidence lines up with the thinking about this area. But these hallmarks of aging, at first there were 9, then 10 years later, 3 more were introduced. And just this last year, another 2 were introduced. So it's up to 14. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? We're going to see more. We'll see more. But in order to qualify as a hallmark of aging, the hallmark has to get worse with age, or if you accelerate it experimentally, so you, for example, make more senescent cells, then you are accelerating the aging process by what you can observe, less health, maybe the animal dies younger. But that also then provides an opportunity to say, okay, if we can create a solution that might modify this in a positive direction, so we, for example, create less senescent cells, then we are intervening in a way that is indeed extending our health span. And so that's what's been so cool, right? And now we have these targets that we can aim for. And some of the work of Qualia is to do that in an innovative way. And to say something about our company, because there's a lot of great supplement companies that are out there, but from the foundation of the origin of the company, the idea was we have too simplistic of a model where we see in society where there's a one-to-one relationship, right? One drug for a particular disease. The reality is you have a lot of intervening forces on a particular outcome of choice. And so what we've tried to do is say, we're going to use a systems approach to try to support the natural physiology of the body. So it's being supported in the right ways for a particular goal that gets extraordinary results. And that was the origin story for Qualia. And the first product that we came out with was a nootropic, which is, if you're not familiar with that term to the listener, I know you are, Brittany, then it's something that is not only helping to augment cognitive capacity, but it's also making the brain healthier over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Your nootropic is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's been a long time since I've had it. I was pregnant and breastfeeding, postpartum, whatnot. So I didn't dabble in a lot of things for a while, but, I loved it. My husband loved it. Like, he noticed a big difference working on it. Working online, working from home. But I think it is interesting, like you're saying, is like, we do live in this very much one-to-one world where even if you have a health issue with one part of your body, you go to the doctor that treats that one part of your body, and that's it. Yeah. Right? Versus like, oh, let's look at the body as a whole and how all the organs and all the systems actually interact with each other. So, it begs the question of like, now there's 14 hallmarks of aging.
Yeah.
But I see supplements and people talking about, oh, this one hallmark, take this one thing and it will slow down this one hallmark. But shouldn't we try to take a systemic approach like we're just talking about right now?
You are absolutely right. The challenge there is, so the benefit is that if you do successfully create something that truly does have a positive impact on one of the hallmarks, you are likely to affect several to potentially even all of the rest of them, because they're all interacting. They're all interacting all the time. The likelihood, though, is that we will be on a form of polypharmacy for those who really want to do everything that they can. So you are addressing stem cells specifically, Senolytics, senescent cells specifically, energy systems directly. And all of those, every time you add another successful intervention, you have the chance of more adroitly then affecting Healthspan overall, which is a global metric of how well your health is performing, what your capacity is at any given time. And so that is cool. Now, some people take more pills better than others, and some people want to take as few as possible. And by the way, this isn't a pill-only solution. The bigger picture is that we have a panoply of different activities that we can take part in from lifestyle. And most of those activities are simply aligning our pattern of living with one that is more evolutionarily aligned. So we are getting sunshine, we are moving, we are sleeping in a particular way, we are eating food that our body it knows what to do with even. And as we get older, we're somewhat protected when we're young. But as we get older, the good and bad news is that we have a narrower range of activities that we really truly confer health. But if we tap into those, then you can see extraordinary results. You can see people living with great vitality well into their 80s. And that's the model that I'm personally pursuing.
This episode is brought to you by Optimize Her, my women's biohacking retreat in Costa Rica, happening March 2nd to 7th, 2026. I am so excited, guys. This isn't just another yoga retreat. It's a 5-night, 6-day, science-backed health optimization woven into feminine restoration, designed specifically for women's bodies. We'll dive into functional medicine and longevity tools, experience healing sessions like sound baths and cacao ceremonies, and recalibrate with daily movement, spa rituals, and farm-to-table meals that support hormones, gut health, and vitality. It's not about fixing. It's about clearing the noise so you can actually tune into your body again. If you're ready for deep restoration and transformation, you can explore all the details in the show notes, and I would absolutely love to see you in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I used to drink a lot. I've been sober for a couple of years now, but when I was younger, like university days, I used to drink like 4 nights a week, like party hard, and in the summers and things like that. And I was fine. Like I was I was fine. I went to work, I went to school, whatever. And then it's just like you said, like as you get older, that window of like what you're capable of handling, whether it's food or alcohol, becomes shorter and shorter or smaller and smaller. And then suddenly you have a few drinks and you're hungover the next day. And then I just got to the point where I was like, this doesn't make sense for me to drink at all because this doesn't align with my values, all these things like that. It's definitely not great for health, regardless of what people say is in red wine and the polyphenols and that whole argument. But I want to circle back to stem cells because stem cells are such a hot topic right now. I'm curious how your stem cell supplement works because my understanding of stem cells is like, it's better to do it in a clinic. It has to be like kept cold. Like it's a much more complicated than just like, hey, here's the supplement. So yeah, if you want to kind of break it down to us.
Okay, I'm so excited that we're having this conversation because this is a great topic. This is our latest product, and we get that question all the time. The way that most people think of stem cells is as a medical therapy. So you go and you get your stem cells extracted. They're autologous, means they came from the self. So you get either a little mini surgery where they're extracted from fat tissue. Those are mesenchymal stem cells, or a bone aspirate from the iliac. That's a common area where you get them out of your bone marrow, and then they're injected back into the body, usually at a site where you're having some pain, like you have an injury that hasn't fully recovered. And it works. They absolutely work. What our product is totally different. Think of it more like stem cell wellness. It's not a surgery. It's not stem cells. We're providing nutrients that make your stem cells in your body perform in a way that is more youthful. And I think then it would be beneficial for us to even talk more about what stem cells are and how they even work, because that'll then inform that subsequent dialogue that we have about why did you create this product and how. But from a high level, we have 37 trillion cells in the body, which is a staggering number. But we lose 50 to 70 billion cells in a day. So if we weren't replacing those cells, we would be all gone in about 2 years. And obviously we would die long before that. We have, even though you have on average, humans have like an 80-year lifespan, up to 120 if you consider what 125 is thought to be the maximal cap for how long a human could possibly live. We're replacing tissues all the time. So we have some cells that live for decades, and some cells that live for weeks, if not even shorter. And so all of those tissues do need to get replaced at the time frame that is needed for them. And to do this, evolution has provided this reservoir of cells that we call stem cells that essentially help our body heal and replace functional tissues. And so what's so interesting and cool about these cells is that while there are many different types, fundamentally, they can do two special things. They can make a clone of themselves, which then can make a clone of itself. And so when it divides, it'll make a clone and a daughter cell. And both of them are daughter cells, and a progenitor cell. The progenitor cell is destined to find a place where you need to replace some tissue, and it will then undergo a process we call differentiation. Think of it like a lump of wet clay. When you have this lump of wet clay, you can make it into a bowl, a plate, a pitcher, a cup. And once it goes through that process and hardens, it has undergone what we call cell fate. It has become what it is destined to become, and it can't go back. You cannot take a bowl of, a plate that you're eating dinner on tonight, and make it back into a wet lump of clay by making it wet and then turn it into a cup. And in fact, I won't go down this path right now, but some of the cool science is looking actually, can we do that by manipulating the knowledge about how these work? But generally that is the one directional path that stem cells go through. Okay. And so that's amazing. And, I'll talk a little bit more about the life cycle. So all these stem cells are spending about 90% of their time in hibernation. And that's really important for them doing their job. They're also called forever cells because they live so long. And we don't want to exhaust that pool by overstimulating them, because then we would run out of them. So they need to mostly stay in this hibernating state. But, you do a hard workout or there's some damage in the body, they need to be woken up from their bed. They need to get into circulation. They need to find specifically where the issue is, migrate to that area, get into a new niche, a new environment, new habitat or neighborhood. And then they need to listen to the signals of that environment and start to become the tissue of choice. When the stem cell system is healthy, that's exactly what it's doing. It's not getting overstimulated and has the ability to become specialized tissue. So hopefully that explanation now helps us with what things are.
Yeah. No, it really does. And it's a really good way to understand how they work. I don't know why, and I probably should know this. Do people extract stem cells from placentas? Or am I making that up?
No, you're not. And so we have, I mentioned earlier that there are different types of stem cells. And there's a term here that is important for the dialogue, and that is potency. So potency is a fancy term that basically says this stem cell can become this type of tissue in the body. And we have something called totipotent or pluripotent stem cells. Those basically can become anything, any type of tissue in the body. Then we have multipotent and unipotent stem cells, and those can become either fewer things or only one thing. Like a muscle satellite cell is a unipotent stem cell, and it can only become muscle tissue, and then nothing else. All right. We also have, like I was mentioning earlier, mesenchymal stem cells that you extract from fat tissue. Those, very interestingly, can then become all sorts of different types of blood cells. They can become different types of connective tissue. And so, yes, why placentas are interesting for stem cells is because those are the types of cells that can become anything. So they have this privileged category. And the idea is that could you bank yours where, you now at some time later in life can take this reservoir of self cells, autologous cells, and then implant them into an area that is no longer healing and then recreate new healthy tissue. And that's the idea for why you would want to bank them.
I mean, and this is so specific, and I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but what about when you encapsulate your placenta, right?
Yeah.
And you take it, which I did. Mm-hmm. And then now I'm thinking if I have another kid, I'm like, well, what if we could preserve my placenta and there is some sort of bank that I pay for, freezer space, whatever that looks like, so that in 20 years, I'm like, hey guys, grab my stem cells out of my placenta. I want to use them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that is something that you can now pay for and go into cold storage. You bank them, and then you could use them later potentially for you and also your child. The more recent science is saying, that might not be necessary, that we can undergo a process where we will create what are called intrinsically pluripotent stem cells, which is a way where you de-differentiate a more advanced stem cell and you kind of reverse it so that it can become more things. It would be like taking the unipotent muscle stem cell and then making it into something that could become something that is affecting your intestinal lining or your skin or your hair. And so that's the promise of the future. And there's now good evidence that we can do that. It's just not fully commercialized, but a lot of very well-funded pharma biotech companies are working on that specifically.
Yeah, I love that. And how do exosomes kind of play into this? So for example, I'm running a retreat in Costa Rica in a couple months, and the spa there, one of the services they offer is exosomes.
Yeah. Exosomes are fascinating, and there are some who feel that the majority of the benefit of stem cells can come from exosomes. So what are exosomes? Exosomes are these tiny messengers that are released by nearly all cells. Okay. So they are these microscopic packages that are 30 to 150 nanometers in size, and they carry proteins, they carry lipids, they carry RNA from one cell to another. So think of them kind of like a messenger system from cell to cell. And that is like, that's their job, communication. And so they deliver these instructions and signals that then can change how a neighboring cell behaves, which is cool. And so that is fundamentally what they do, but they also carry with them a lot of the healing power that was once credited to stem cell therapy overall. So they may actually, some of that healing therapy may even come from exosomes that are part of your stem cells. So you get your stem cells extracted and you inject them back into the body, let's say an ankle or a knee, and you have heal and you're in a better place. Is it because the stem cells that you extracted entered into the body, migrated into the particular niche and became differentiated tissue? Or is it because they released these exosomes that gave the signals for your existing stem cells to do that? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that would actually be propitious if that was indeed the case, because it's easier. It would be easier for us to extract the benefits and have people benefit from them if that was the case. What I think is it might depend on time of life. We do experience a decline in the total number of stem cells, but what happens with aging, this is an important part of our discussion too. It's just weird. Like stem cell exhaustion is one of the hallmarks of aging. But exhaustion doesn't mean that we have simply lost numbers, but instead they start doing weird things. So they become too hard to wake up from their hibernation. Or the opposite is true. They become too easy to wake up and we end up releasing too many of them. Like in some cases with aging, you have a 9-fold increase in the release of hematopoietic stem cells, but each one of those individual stem cells becomes less productive at becoming your target tissue. It's like the body's trying to keep up, but it's not. And so what you really see with aging is like a falling away from a Goldilocks principle, that health is right in the middle. Too hard to wake up, they can't do their job. Too easy to wake up, you exhaust them, and now you've run out of your pool. So that's just one example that has been clearly illustrated by researchers like Tom Rando at Stanford. Now he's at UCLA. They wrote a specific paper on the hallmarks of stem cell aging, where they look specifically at the characteristics of the stem cells, what happens when we get older. So to go back to my point here is, if you are a 90-year-old person and you actually have experienced a diminution in the amount of stem cells that you have, then you might need stem cells replacement to do a better job at healing some tissue. If you're in your 50s and you still have a lot of stem cells, they're just not performing the function that they're designed to perform, then exosomes might be perfectly adequate to do most, if not all, of that job.
Are people injecting stem cells or exosomes that are not theirs?
Yes. So that's one of the benefits. So if you inject somebody else's stem cells, then you run the risk of having those stem cells be rejected by your immune system. And that's one of the big issues. And that's why you would bank your own from an early age, from the placenta, or, so the baby eventually would have this reservoir of stem cells that they could utilize, right? But not all stem cells actually, there's a new type called Muse cells. And this is a type of stem cell that you can find within your bone marrow, which is a major reservoir for stem cells. And there's a Japanese scientist named Mari Dezawa who, she basically entered into stem cell research in the mid 1990s. So she was really early here. And like many things in science, she discovered these serendipitously. And I've heard her tell her story about this, and it's fascinating. But yeah, so standard stem cells, as we were talking about, they're tissue specific. And so these, around 2003, she noticed that there was this unusual cluster in these mesenchymal stem cell cultures that she had preserved. And they weren't behaving in the same way that she had come to think that these types of mesenchymal stem cells behave. So she's like, okay, they were more stress resistant. Because I'll tell you the story. She ended up forgetting, she went out drinking with her colleagues in Japan, and she forgot to bring the culture in and handle it in the right way. So she came back the next day and they were all still alive, where typically regular mesenchymal stem cells would have all died. So she's like, what the heck is going on here? Why did that happen? And so she ended up naming them Muse cells, which stands for multilineage differentiating stress enduring cells, which is a mouthful. But multilineage, they can become multiple different things, different in terms of how they differentiate, stress enduring, so they lasted a lot longer than the other ones. And now there are some businesses that are looking to be able to extract and utilize Muse cells. And the reason I thought about this is because these stem cells don't induce the same degree of autoimmune issues. So you could actually get donor Muse cells and use them to help you heal an injury, which is very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I don't know if I would ever use stem cells from somebody else, to be honest. Like, I don't know if that's for me, but I would definitely use them for myself or for my placenta and that type of thing. I just also like from an energetic standpoint, and it's like above this conversation right now, but just, and I saw, who did I see talking about this? His name's Josh. What's his last name? Anyway, I would just be concerned about like injecting different people's cells in my body and then being like, how many cells of my body are actually me? Obviously it's way more, but like, I don't know. I just think there's something weird about the whole composition that I am not there for right now, if that makes sense.
Well, I hear you. And you'd have to, I mean, again, this is early research. So for me, I'd like to see a lot more research on this before I would consider it. But I'm monitoring the topic because I do think it has a lot of potential.
What do you think about the skincare like trend of stem cells? So like I bought, I don't even know what it was. Was it like a serum? And it was like plant stem cell serum or cream or whatever it was. Like, is there any validity to plant stem cells in skincare products?
So what they're probably trying to indicate is not that stem cells are in the plants, but there are botanicals that are affecting the performance of your stem cells in your body. And that actually aligns a lot with what we've done. So if you think about, I mean, what Maria Conboy at UC Berkeley showed, that if you reconfigure the neighborhood that the stem cells are residing in, their niche, that you can get them to perform at youthful levels, which is very exciting. So what happens is, there are some definitive changes that occur with stem cells with age, but a very important part is that the neighborhood changes. So they start to get weird signals. And as a result, then they just can't do their job. And so if you can create, in a way, I think this is a pretty good analogy, but imagine you're speaking with somebody who is a little hard of hearing. And, you and I are talking at a totally normal volume. You and I can hear those signals, but the person who's hard of hearing can't. And so what some of these botanicals can do, I mean, it's an analogy here, but it's like you're raising the volume so that the stem cells can actually hear the signal and act accordingly. The message is getting through. And that, in a way, is one of the fundamental goals of our product, which is, how do we help stem cells do their job? How do we help them perform healthfully? And so when you're getting older and it's harder for them to do their job and replace tissue, then a lot of these very interesting nutraceuticals, in our formulation, we have 15 different ingredients, and they're not all trying to do the same thing. They're doing different things around. Some of them are acting to try to support the correct awakening or activation of stem cells. Get them up, right? They're in their niche. How do we get them up? Then we want them to have the right homing signals. Homing is a term that is used in the science to help the stem cell find the right place, because they don't wander aimlessly. They need to find where they need to go. And an analogy that I like to think about it is, think of these stem cells that have like a nose on it, and where they need to go, somebody has baked some cookies and put them on the shelf, and they can smell that signal. And so they are going to wander in that direction. And then that's how they find. And we're raising that signal. And then some really interesting things happen. So like once they do that and they get to where they need to go, the differentiating signals can now lead to very weird consequences. So for example, for like an older person, you might have a muscle stem cell, but instead of turning into active muscle tissue, it turns into a fibroblast, which is like scar tissue. So now imagine a 90-year-old person and think about how they move. They're stiff, they're hunched over, they're weaker. And that is because a lot of their muscle has turned into scar tissue, not functional active tissues. And that is a result of replacing tissues in a non-optimal way. You're not making muscle tissue, you're making scar tissue, right? So that's all of those parts we're trying to support. Another one, for example, is we have a variety of phenolic compounds in our formulation, and those will stimulate the production of glutathione within a cell. And glutathione turns out to be very important for helping a stem cell be resilient. And one of the other characteristics of an aging stem cell is that it tries to go through its process of differentiating, turning into its clone and the progenitor cell, and it's not strong enough to do it. It dies midway. Or it's trying to now differentiate into, let's say, the muscle tissue or your intestinal lining or wherever, right? All the parts in the body. And it's going through the process and it just doesn't have the juice to get there and it dies. And so this was one of the more complicated formulas that I think we've ever come up with, because you have to really understand what the life cycle looks like. You have to really understand what happens with aging to the system. And then you have to try to intervene in a smart way. And so what we did is screen all sorts of compounds that show to have some beneficial effect on stem cells. And this is where the art of formulation comes in. You see a variety of very smart, well-read PhDs sitting in a room and saying, okay, how do we construct this in a way that is truly efficacious? And kind of like our Senolytic product, you only take it, which is a separate conversation, but Senolytic is killing off senescent cells. You only take it 2 days in a month. Our stem cell product, you take 4 days in a month, and then you let it rest. You let your stem cell system rest. Because remember, you don't want to be pumping them out all the time. That would contribute to the hallmark of aging, stem cell exhaustion. So you have to be very, very smart about how you go about like what you intend to try to do.
Yeah. I love this. I'm so excited about this product, and I'll have to get some when I'm back in Canada, because I doubt you guys ship to where I am right now. But I really want to try this because I love your Senolytic and I love some of the other products that I've used over the years. But this is definitely next level. And I think it's a safe way for people to start dabbling in the stem cell world without going into a medical clinic, without using someone else's stem cells. This is like a really nice first step. I think it's an easy step. So if people want to try it, if they want to connect with you guys, where can they do that and how can they find you?
Yeah. So we are currently offering stem cells on the qualialife.com website. So, I'll say one thing too. What I'm most excited about, we talked earlier about, if you really are if you have the goal of augmenting your health span, improving your capacity, thwarting these hallmarks of aging, you can do it. There isn't a silver bullet, at least now. And even the best guesses of future prospects is a multi-formulation cocktail. But one of the primary reasons why stem cells can't do their job is because of an elevation in inflammation. That's why they can't hear the signal. And what is one of the reasons why we have an increase in inflammation? Because we have an increasing burden of senescent cells. And so for me, the dual formula of trying to kill your senescent cells with our senolytic. A senolytic means a senescent killing cell, right? These are like zombie cells. They're not fully dead. But in fact, one thing that happens with senescent cells is they are launching 120 different inflammatory protein breakdown molecules into their surrounding. And in youth, that signal, that's like a beacon. And that signal says, hey, immune system, come clear me out. But what happens with your immune system as you get older? It gets less strong. And so the beacons are increasing around the body and they have an outsized effect on increasing inflammation. And so for me, the most interesting thing is to take the senolytic product 2 days a month, wait a day, and then take the stem cell products to try to stimulate new healthy tissue, right? Get rid of that inflammation and now stimulate some regeneration. And I think that's a beautiful 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Back to back. Smart.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to have to try that. Yeah. So I will link that on my show notes and on my website. I think my discount code biohackingbrittany is still working with you guys, but I will check because they can definitely use that and try that. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was great. And I learned a lot and I'm stoked about stem cells now.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Think of this as stem cell wellness. That's very different than medical stem cell therapy. But the last thing I'll say, if you're ever going to go get a very expensive stem cell therapy, I would absolutely take this product at the same time because you want to make those expensive stem cells that you're injecting into your body work, right? You want to get better ROI. So you don't have to pair the two. But if you are, I would absolutely. That's why a lot of clinicians that are in the longevity space are using our product before they perform a procedure. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. It's a little insider tip. Thank you so much. And I will link this in the show notes. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Really enjoyed it, Brittany. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Biohacking with Brittany. I hope today's conversation gave you something to take into your own life, a practice, a perspective, or simply a reminder to trust your body. If you love this episode, please leave a review, share it with someone else who could benefit, and join me over on Instagram at biohackingbrittany for more. And if you're ready to go deeper, you can explore my retreats, community, favorite tools, all linked for you in the show notes. Until next time, remember, your body already knows.